We are a architectural lighting manufacturer. I will not ask you how many of you knows Deltalight, because I hope that the majority knows Deltalight, since we have been inviting you here. So I was saying that I am here tonight in my role of Global Brand Ambassador for Deltalight. And Deltalight, as you know, is a Belgian manufacturer. And we were founded in 1989, thanks to Paul Amelot, from a small shop which was selling hi-fi, so high fidelity, so stereo sound systems. It evolved with the time into a small lighting operation, and then became a company that today is based in Belgium, but it's operating in over 100 countries worldwide. So we have our own operation, our own facilities in many countries, from North America to Asia. And still today, despite this growth, we are a family-run and owned company. So here you can see our founder, Paul, and now the company has been let's say, taken over by his two sons, Jan and Peter, who are managing, the company nowadays. With a great expansion again, we continue to develop and grow, and we try to bring a new technology and new design into our portfolio. So what do? We provide architectural solution. What does it mean to provide architectural solution? It means, to have nice product that could fulfill the needs of the designers, to make sure that we can propose the correct solution for the lighting every time that there is a project. So, as I said before, light is very personal, so will require also a personal approach. The relation with the client and with the designer is very important. Thanks to this, we can propose a lighting solution that will be augmenting the success of a project. And I think you can see here in this amazing building, as well as in other projects with NEO that we have successfully supplied and delivered, starting from the first few projects in Germany, from Frankfurt to Düsseldorf to Berlin, together with another very important architectural studio from Copenhagen, SHL, to the two projects here in Holland, in Rotterdam, and here today with MBRDV. We try to interpret the desire of the client, the desire of the designer, to make sure that we can achieve a good and successful lighting scheme. And one of our main goals is to design for comfort. Comfort is something that for human being is extremely important. So we think that comfort must be likewise, I think this is one also of the very important and success of NEO, create comfort, visual comfort in this case. So making sure that your lighting solution is discreet, is not interfering with our activity, is creating an atmosphere. And this is something that you can feel in this space. When you walk through the space, you feel an atmosphere. You feel that the space is a high-level space. You feel comfortable with the space. And I would say that one of the secrets of a successful lighting scheme is when you let the people feel comfortable without understanding that lighting is giving you that comfort solution. So it's all in the way that you use the light. It's not the lighting fixture, it's the lighting solution. So creating comfort means being able to illuminate correctly the object, the space, making sure that you can visualize what you need, but at the same time to feel comfortable in that space. So our mission is to complete architectural vision. So, and that the point where comes the interaction with the designers, with the clients. The designer have their architectural visions. I would say each practice has their own architectural vision. And so we try to assist them to complete. So we become part of this architectural vision. And then, we work in many different type of projects, from residential to retail to offices to hospitality. Nowadays, Deltalight has the ability, technology, and design to cover all this type of project. So what can we promise you? We can promise you these three things: comfort, simplicity, consistency. Okay? It means that the comfort I already explained to you. Simplicity is a simple design, is a simple product that can be integrated and can become even invisible in your space, depending from the solution that you're looking for. But at the same time, it's consistent. It's Belgian. It means also consistency. What can you find also in a Deltalight product? You can find the unexpected detail. The unexpected detail is what makes a difference from a Deltalight product to a product of another manufacturer. And so we wanted to show you an example. You have also here an example of the collaboration we had with the MVRDV, also in product design, when they came the first time to our factory, and they were really impressed about our warehouse of profiles. Okay, and so they came up with this great idea of using scrap of the profiles to produce this lighting fixture, which are a sustainable solution to leftovers. And here you can see also a customization that was done for an event and for the book of MVRDV. Is table. If you look at it, from the top, it looks like an urban setting, really. So that's the unexpected detail. So to conclude, and again to leave, the microphone to the two presentation we're going to have tonight. This our goal is to work with you and not for you. Because again, it's through this collaboration that we can really assist you in designing amazing project.
Once again, I wanted to thank Deltalight and Neo for hosting us in this amazing space, and to MVRDV for designing it. It really has felt like a community of like-minded people, and that ties into, the lifestyle brand that Neo is hoping to create. We're trying to do the same thing at SAOTA. And our office, despite being founded in 1986, we've been around, I think, for 38 years. We have over 400 staff and 9 dedicated principals. These are my partners. Stefan recently spoke at a talk in Guangzhou in China, and we still feel like the new kids on the block. And I don't know how many of you do know SAOTA and the work that we do, but to talk alongside the likes of MDRDV is just a dream come true for us. So Stefan, the good-looking one on the left, the second to the left, started the company 38 years ago. Philip Omsdal and Greg Truen joined him a few years later, and they've become the name Stefan Anthony Omsdal Truen Architects that defines the SAOTA brand. A few years later, Philippe Faucher, Mark Bullivant, Logan Gordon joined the principal group, followed by Roxanne Kay, and most recently, myself and Dominic. We really strive to push the boundaries of what we do. And I think it's proof in the amount of countries that we're working in. Despite being located in Cape Town, it hasn't seemed to be a problem. We found the systems and the strategies to work with clients abroad, with architects of record. So we're working on 6 continents and over 193 cities. Together with our sister companies, ARC and OCA, we really look at delivering a level of detail that encompasses holistic architectural spaces. So from custom bespoke door handles to interior architecture and design to the shell of a building. So these are some of the design collaborations we've been working on with ARC, mainly in South Africa. But you can see that there's definite texture, really African-based warmth, and light and texture play a huge role in evoking a certain emotion and relaxed lifestyle quality that we're trying to evoke in our spaces. The same goes for OCA. They design bespoke furniture pieces with amazing artisans, local artisans, and each one is built by hand, and it kind of gives that human, tangible effect of something rather unique with its own fingerprint. We are really systems oriented, so we have included VR and virtual reality into our daily design systems. We work with BIM. We love using data to inform our projects. Yes, it's just such a wonderful experience to work through these spaces in virtual reality with our clients before finding any surprises during the construction moments on site. We've also recently held quite a few exhibitions based on the monograph that we've recently released. First, we launched the exhibition in Cape Town, followed by Miami, and last year we presented at the Venice Biennale. We really, as I mentioned, strive to committing to great architecture and holistic spaces that evoke emotion and are really human-centric. And that has led us to winning a few local and international awards. We have a huge staff contingent that work across the globe and around South Africa. During COVID, we outgrew our office, so the majority of our employees work remotely. And we've come up with amazing systems to collaborate and keep an amazing office culture. So we've got Blink socials on Fridays, also Design Fridays, where we get external speakers to come and artisans to come speak to our employees about design, art, what's happening locally as well as abroad. We have RAD sessions, which are research, analyze, and design sessions, where a whole group of individuals on each team come together and really crit design. So it's very unhierarchical and open across the board, and it's quite lovely to hear such a diverse range of opinions when it comes to design. We also have Rusk and Stretch, which are fun yoga classes, and Rusk is actually a type of biscuit, local South African biscuit, that you dip in your coffee. That's why there's a little steam thing on the K. And rus in Afrikaans means to rest. So we get like a 30-minute tea break where we are thrown into a room with other employees and you can have a chat with people who you don't usually collaborate with. Really have great social outreach programs that work with children who, live on the streets, who are really wanting to improve their living conditions. We support 9 Miles, which is a surfing locally based nonprofit organization. In the past few years, we're really trying to really educate the youth in schools and high schools to try and promote a more diverse employee group down the line. So we offer annually about 35 full bursaries for students in undergrad and postgrad architecture degrees. Light, Space and Life, which is categorized in our monograph, it's really about placemaking, experience, and context. And all of those aspects coming together after having a site visit, things that really stick with you, and how you can almost evoke something of the place, but also manifest a client's identity. So this is very important for us in in really understanding how our clients want to live in the buildings that we design for them. And a lot of this has to do with perception and how we see. And I saw it a lot in MVRDV's presentation, and just how, sparks, art, the ocean just inspire. And we run very similar processes in terms of themes within our work. And, in terms of how we do it, we really follow a typical process at times. But then we need to ask the right questions, and we need to really pursue and reimagine and really focus on human-centric design, understanding the client, their needs, their requirements, and then most of all, have a little bit of fun in the process. So it's not always a very straight, direct answer that we're looking for, and often we do multiple revisions and iterations and cross-collaboration to find the right answer and the right result. Just looking at how we work in plan and section, and these are principles that we've kind of been trained in Cape Town, because we're working on this very long peninsula, and to capture the views and to capture icons in the landscape and let in light when you need it and shelter the building when you need it is critical. Talk to you about a few of my favorite projects, my personal favorite projects in the office. Some of them quite a few years old, but there are a few relatively new ones, and they range in scale and typology from residences to apartment buildings to a hotel and a leisure and recreation center in China. And what I love about them is that they each have their own unique character, but there is a thread that ties them all together, which I hope to explain to you. So we're going to move across typologies and scales, but also jump around the world a little bit. And I think starting in Cape Town is quite pertinent to how we've grown as a company. And always, you can see just the topography really allows us to work in a very small sliver between the sea and the mountains. I don't know if any of you have been to Cape Town. I don't know, hands up. I might sound like a bit of a tour guide, and if you need any travel tips, you're welcome to come to Pierre and I afterwards. But our home is a very special place, and I think what we've learned is that the outdoors and any open space in nature is critical, and trying to capture all of those aspects is fundamental to our practice around the world. So here you can see the Cape Peninsula. It's what I explained. It's quite a mountainous region, and there's a large flat portion in the center. The City Bowl is where the pink asterisk is, where our office is also located. Upper Albert is actually one of the principal's home, Philip Olmsdal. It's on the foot of Lion's Head, and it's surrounded by Table Mountain National Park. So it really has wonderful vistas towards the city. It's kind of just further to the left. What I love about this project is that it really has been inspired by the local flora and fauna. To the right, you can see the red sands of the Kalahari Desert, and you can see the flora that is almost quite light with these sharp shards of green. And during the sunlight, it can be quite harsh when the grasses catch the light, but the opacity and the color of the red just makes for such a beautiful array of colors. So what Philip really wanted to achieve was to create this garden platform in the city and introduce a type of lens or filter to shelter the building from the harsh sunlight. I think he was incredibly adventurous in experimenting with local craft and material. He used the previous breeze blocks on the site and incorporated into the design and really found inspiration there. He had lived next door to the property for almost 7 years and then decided to build here. So he really knew the site well. He worked with a local manufacturer to create these precast concrete screens, and that allowed him to really attain, I don't want to say perfection, but craftsmanship that could align with a building of this type. The skill set is really based on column and slab and masonry, and I think this was incredibly adventurous because I can tell you sometimes the concrete work in South Africa is scary. So as I mentioned, the house is positioned on the slope of Lion's Head, and you can see that it's quite an urban suburb just off the city business district of Cape Town. What Philip wanted to do was really create quite a dense urban fabric, and as he bought the properties adjacent to it. So what he tried to do is raise the living areas onto a plinth to create a really wide and deep garden with apartments below. So it's quite democratic in working with the site and giving maximum views to each of the apartments that are situated below. This is the vantage point from the garden that I spoke about, and some of the principles of our design is this real connection to the outdoors. You can see lighting also plays a huge role during the daytime and at night in terms of reading the extent of the space. We also like to be respectful of our context and to, the inhabitants of our buildings, but we also want to be passively responsible. I mean, we have an electricity crisis at the moment in Cape Town, and so we're really trying to, most South Africans are trying to go green quite quickly. And so solar energy really provides most of the energy for most of the energy consumption of the building. We've also introduced a really amazing skylight that brings southern light, but also acts as a wind chimney for cross ventilation. You can see how views are framed to the city beyond between these lush trees in the garden. It really feels like this unique location perched above the city. One thing that's quite interesting in terms of the materiality used is that everything was sourced locally. And referring back to the Kalahari sands, you can see the pigment and concrete, as well as the green stone chip used in the terrazzo. So the green stone chip and some of the pigment comes from the west coast of South Africa, almost going up to the Northern Cape and Namibia. And it's sourced from old copper mines. So it's kind of like an oxidized stone that becomes green over time. Here you can see how we've created pattern and texture in the flooring. This was another collaboration with ARC and Ochre. They created a bespoke console out of Cape granite behind the dining table. What I really love about his home is that it feels intimate and expansive at the same time. And I think you can really feel how he's manifested his family's identity and their lifestyle in how they live in the house. View from their main bedroom and their ensuite bathroom with the light cove and wind chimney. Here's another bespoke peak by Arc and Ochre. Beautiful handle detail. What's also wonderful is this porosity that we try to bring into our designs, introducing courtyards to bring in indirect light, skylights and clear stories that wash light, natural light down, internal facades. We always try and use these strong visual axes to connect you to the landscape beyond. Just looking at the floor layouts. So on the first floor, you have the main entertainment space, a home office and kitchen and TV lounge. You come in at a split level, so you make your way up to the building or down to the lower level and garage. On the second floor, you have all the private spaces, all the bedrooms, a little pajama lounge, study area, as well as the main bedroom. Moving on to another project in South Africa. This is quite different to the previous building in terms that it's situated in a really magical landscape. It's semi-arid desert region, so it's quite dry, but the landscapes are incredibly monumental and primal. And you can see some of our Dutch heritage in Klein and Groot. And what we're going to show you today as well is the amazing Cape Dutch vernacular that was brought to us by the Dutch. And over these past few days, looking at or visiting Antwerp and arriving in Amsterdam, seeing all these gables, it feels like you've created these mountainscapes in the city that are so incredible. And here you can kind of see how in Cape Town, it's repeated in such a way and then reinterpreted by quite a phenomenal Cape Townian architect, or architects Harvey and Gwen Fagan. And I think this Dutch influence has actually really brought such a lot of life and various interpretations in our local context. So here, this is what I wanted to tie up to. Here you can see the Cape Dutch vernacular gables, and you can kind of see how it mimics the mountainscape beyond. And that's just something that, is so beautiful in such a vast landscape, and seeing how it's reflected here in such an urban landscape, it's such a beautiful contrast. So this is a functioning farm, and it's made up of an old wine store, a pump house, a main house, a shed, and 2 barns. So this is a project all about restoration using local building techniques and practices, also sourcing local materials. It was done in a collaboration with Jacob Boyen's architects. This is how we found the home. So you can see that it had been added upon over time and has grown to need to meet the occupier's needs over the years. I think our intent and aim was to try and take it back to, how it was originally built. And as we removed the plaster and the latest ceiling materials, you could kind of see the history unfold like a skin of an onion, kind of an archaeological dig. So here you can see the 3 aspects of the building that SAOTA focused on. The wine house, there were a few elements that were added over time that were removed in red. Here you can see the process of how the plaster was removed, how beautiful skylights were introduced to pick up on the textures of the wall and really, evoke the history of the place and the crafting techniques. This is the main living space of the main house. And you can see how the lintels were introduced as additional support over time. Generally, when the dams were built, all the soil that was used to excavate and build the dams were used to build the mud bricks. So continuing that philosophy, this is the final outcome. And it's such a beautiful, rich overlay of contemporary aspects and really old, textured nuance. So after the 3 buildings were refurbished, Greg built a pump house and did quite a few experimentations with earth. And that pump house was used to support an irrigation system that was set up to kind of organize the landscape behind and to irrigate a fully functioning olive farm. So you can see the pedestrian access in yellow that connects various terraces towards the farm, and the vehicular access in red behind the house. So generally, we tend to always arrive behind to almost unfold and choreograph movement through the space. Mm. So this is a few photos taken a few months ago, and you can see it's restored to its original nature. So you can see how it's integrated into the landscape. these old vat walls that define the planting and the layering of the space from public to private. Using materials found on site, particularly the granite and sandstone rock, poplar beams. There was a lot of inspiration also from the planting. Spekboom is a huge carbon sequestrator in South Africa. If you plant a hectare of it, it sequesters more carbon than, I think, a tropical rainforest. And that also inspired some of the coloring of the building, because they have these beautiful bright pink flowers. And Greg decided to paint the wine house bright pink to stand out within the landscape. You can see how some of the interior details were developed for screens and balustrades. This is the pump house with mud plaster, really local building techniques using arches, pre-constructed steel beams to make sure that you could bring in natural light and ventilation. Moving on to Aspen, Colorado. This is a holiday home that we built are currently building for an American family, and we're really inspired by the local vernacular of the ski chalets and kind of how it picked up the peaks of the mountaintops. We also intrigued by the materiality and the rough construction of the stonework and the timber siding. We also loved that the roofs were planted and really integrated with the natural landscape surrounding the property. So the roof was really defined by a planar element that angled towards the slope and to the peaks beyond. We then decided to carve and sculpt to really create a lens within the space below. This was also subconsciously tying into the Aspen Chalet and some of the Silver Mountain peaks. And what we did was open a few skylights to take vantage of certain views into the peaks beyond, and also to allow for smoke extraction from some of the outdoor areas that we provided, where we had these beautiful fire pit. So under this planar roof, 3 very heavy mass objects are grounding the building and supporting the structure. This houses a nest work area above, plus the main living area and kitchen below, as well as a study space and the garage, as well as the main bedroom. All the private areas are mainly restricted to the lower level that have great connection to the garden. We really wanted to make sure that the building could live through each season and evoke different characters and emotion as the climate changed over the year. So one aspect was planting the roof to integrate the building into the landscape. The second aspect was using local materials, rough cut local gree limestone, reclaimed local barn timber, and actually then charring it so that it was quite discreet in terms of it mimicking the aspen bark in the surroundings. Here you can see the type of typology and the stones, and also the relation to the silver mining that happened in the 1800s. So we chose a very particular piece of bark to become a silver handle for the door. So the project almost became a kit of parts of these stereotomic masses and this very floating planar element that was built up and planted to house the entertainment spaces below. Here you can see a vantage point from the river. There's a really beautiful hiking track just below the house, which the lower level gains access to. Here you can see that the entrance is quite discreet with the spoke handle for the front door, which really opens to this magical world beyond. Really framed by the roofscape and connecting indoors with outdoors quite seamlessly, and really providing spaces that can be used all year round in the summer, winter, spring months, which has been quite a challenge coming from Cape Town. I mean, where we have a lot of sun all year round, generally always want to open the spaces, but I think using sheer expanse of glass and triple glazing and planted roofs and great insulation, we still are able to provide that indoor-outdoor effect that you can achieve in many other places in the world quite simply. Moving on to a project in Dakar called The One. It's an apartment building just off Rue de la Corniche. So it's a project that started in the late 90s, the developer on the left and right. And this client has really been a patron of ours for many, many years. He came to Cape Town and we built his holiday home. And since then, he's just come back to us and has really, I don't know, been really inspirational in giving us his ideas and evoking what he wants out of a building and out of a space. So he loves using local materials, local practices. He really wants things to be the least amount of complications as possible. And, you know, looking at Senegal and Dakar and walking around the site and looking at these beautiful natural structures that you find in the landscape, this was quite inspirational for us as a form. So you can see that we started off with a mass, and we decided to divide this mass into 2 blocks by carving an entrance through it. These 2 blocks were then displaced to allow access to views and light. Then they were also sculpted and faceted and opened up to the sea views beyond. This is a small film just describing the same process, but here you can see it more 3-dimensionally. So we've divided the apartments in the left and the right ring with a corner coffee shop that was introduced on the lower level to get back to the streetscape. We have shared entertainment spaces on the top floor that include a spa, gym, and swimming pool zone. We're using local materials, mud plaster and rammed earth walls. Here you can see where we are sourcing the materials from, quite close to the site, and trying to use whatever we possibly can in the local precinct from the excavation. Here you can see how that carved entranceway is experienced from the road front. This is quite a busy, noisy road, and the idea was to turn our backs onto this side of the city. It's also the northeasterly side where the harmattan winds blow from, so these are quite sandy and dirty. So I think the material palette and the texture and the massing of the space is really to try and protect the inhabitants from the extreme climate conditions that can be experienced there quite often. Again, here you can see how we like to bring in light to really evoke emotion in the space, playing with scale and texture. So here you can see how the levels are dispersed. We've got single apartments on each wing and level, with the ground floor hosting a coffee shop and restaurant. And then the top floor, as I mentioned, the entertainment areas, swimming pool, gym, spa zone. Here you can see how each wing is connected via this large cut through the lobby. And how it works with the sloping gradient of the site. We really like to see the passage of time by introducing skylights so that we can follow the shadows throughout the day. It really animates space really beautifully. We also tried to introduce greenery into the deeper spaces within the building. Moving on to another project for the same client. This is a hotel resort just outside to the northwest of northwest of Dakar. It's a baobab forest, and the idea and intent was to try and repeat Muslim vernacular architecture and reinterpret it in a contemporary way. So the client wanted a golf resort, food and beverage center to the middle, the hotel rooms to the left, and a more public entertainment zone, all to feature around these very prominent baobabs in the landscape. The idea was to excavate quite a bit of soil to use in the construction of the buildings, but also to create these berms so that on arrival you really don't destroy the beauty of the landscape with buildings. Here you can see how we've reinterpreted some of the local vernacular in the main building. This is currently being redesigned to become a spa. Again, we're wanting to use rammed earth from the site to really create these beautiful volumes that are enhanced by the natural light. But as you can see, the openings are quite small because it can get very hot and humid. Here you can see we have a boma around a really beautiful baobab tree. These trees are enormous. I wouldn't even be able to explain to you the scale of them. I think we'd need at least 5 or 6 people to stand and hold hands. And they're hundreds of years old. This is the food and beverage center. We're trying to offer quite a few options in terms of a kids' play area, a local cafe, a high-end restaurant for local day visitors as well, all with access to this water body. Moving on to the hotel rooms, you can see that there's a berm that surrounds the back of the building that really shelters you again from the Harmattan winds, but also provides a bit more protection as you walk to and from the rooms. We tried to condense the buildings as closely together to try and keep as much of the landscape as untouched as possible, with beautiful vantage points over the lake. Here you can see how we proceed through these very strong walls, really trying to shade the pathways to and from various amenities in the site. Here you can see how we've played with the form and really used a simple kit of parts to try and continue the golden thread of the language throughout the other buildings and amenities. Here you can see our focus each and every time is on the baobab. This is a competition project that we won for a mixed residential project in Harburg, just south of Hamburg. It's in quite an industrial area, sandwiched between an agricultural zone and a multi-residential zone. The site is actually situated next to an abandoned rubber factory, but that was actually quite beautifully built, and the scale and the proportion of the building was just incredible. And we found a lot of inspiration in that building for the design. Here you can see we wanted to connect back to the surroundings, reintroduce a connection to the waterways, and really give back urban platforms for public use. So the apartments range between 30 square meters and 140. Some of them are subsidized by the government. Others are for private sale. We really tried to give them their own identity and start playing with private and semi-private spaces throughout the building. So we've created this really beautiful promenade that then can gain access to a more semi-private platform in between these buildings that are a little bit more sheltered, for playgrounds for kids. What we also enjoy is we've situated the larger apartments on the corner to gain access to the better views. You can see how we've arranged the typologies across each wing. What was also fundamental for us was in the working of the facade to bring additional light in, also giving character and a bit of an echo and mimic of the original historic rubber factory that was adjacent to it. On the top floor, we introduced quite a few amenities for the inhabitants of the building. So we tried to introduce urban agriculture on the top, as well as play areas for kids, a 1 kilometer running track that ties all three of the buildings together. We've also introduced various colors that we found close to the site to give each building their own unique identity. The lower level really opens up to more public amenities that activate the street front. As I mentioned, the shared recreational roof spaces for the inhabitants of the building. Hafen City window meant that we needed to provide double openings for each opening in the building, and then a super basement for parking. The building also kicked open to provide shelter for inhabitants, a kind of colonnade and passageway during the winter months. Here you can see some of these more private platforms, how they connect to the public landscape. Some of our inspiration for the materiality and colors. Here you can see how we've tried to really introduce urban agriculture, try and reinstate the local flora and fauna at the canal, because I do think that the rubber factory previously I think they had to really clean up the whole area and reinstate what was there before. So we've also got a skateboarding track, jungle gym, amenities for kids, entertainment areas on the roof for everyone to enjoy. moving on to the last project, so I won't keep you much longer. We're going to end off with Film City in Wuxi, China. It's a leisure recreational building in Wuxi, which is 130 kilometers west of Shanghai. It's housed next to a well-developed film industry zone in the city. Wuxi is known for its great economic development as well as the old historical tea houses. Here you can see it's also situated north of Lake Taihu, which is one of China's largest freshwater lakes. So we really tried to have a look at the natural landscapes and find inspiration. And from the site at an elevation, we have great vantage points to the city's business district, the hills beyond, as well as to the lake. Unfortunately, like Cape Town, Wuxi had serious water issues in 2007 with an algae bloom that provided most of the water to the rest of the city. So the city's imposed really stringent laws on all the manufacturing factories there, and many of them have left since to try and rehabilitate this zone. Here you can see the vacant site. It's called the Hollywood Precinct. Huali is the district of the suburb, and they really want this to be China's Hollywood. So it's been divided into 3 phases. This area is the first that will be developed. It'll have a master planning component with the clubhouse, which is a recreation center, as well as a residential component. They're really wanting this precinct to be a connector between Film City and the film district and the rest of the neighborhood. So they really want to introduce parks, greenery, and invite the public to really experience what film means to China. So this is the current project site. The Wuxi Film Clubhouse is going to be straddling the canal, forms in the landscape to really try and inspire the building typology and form. What we thought would be fascinating was to really use film narrative to come up with the architectural elements of the building. So as you move around the building and through the spaces, you're exposed to various obstacles, conflict, elevation, until you reach a climatic point within the building, which would be the rooftop, and then again how you descend and resolve. So here again, this kind of explains our conceptual thinking and diagram. So a very strong beginning, middle, and end. And this is entirely public facility. So here you can see how we've tried to mold the earth plane and the various elevations to really entice the public into the building. We've worked on quite a rigid structure taken from the city grid that becomes our support system in this very fluid space. We've also introduced these pod-like forms of different volumes that kind of create these strange angles, interesting volumes, beautiful plays of light within the space. And then we have this beautiful veil that oversails the roof, as well as the facade that is made up with a very beautiful screen layer that filters in the light, but also becomes a canvas for Chinese film. Here you can see on the ground floor is the really public promenade with some back of house facilities and office space. I'm jumping really quickly here. which you can see some of the obstacles that cause conflict in the path and the progression of the space. You can see some of the pod-like language that houses various amenities from restaurants, meeting rooms, etc. And moving down into this is climax, sorry, jumping to the top of the building, to the event space and the outdoor cinema, where you really have great vantage points to the surrounds, to the hills beyond, to the lake, and to the city business district. As you descend to the resolution, this is the space that is quite embedded in the earth and connects with the ground. Really contemplative. Here we'll walk you through the same sequence. As you make your way around these shapely facades that really filter and grade the light, but also animate and highlight the real idea of this district to the rest of the neighborhood. Working with different platform levels and experiences, the rooftop bar and entertainment area, and back down to the entrance and the connection to the canal. Here we can really see how we've tied in this narrative, and we're working with a consultant to make this a reality. It's quite an ambitious project for us, and so far it's being well received, and we're making it happen. We just want to talk through some of the passive principles that we are also using in terms of filtering the light, stormwater collection, solar energy to cover the majority of the building's consumption, really shading the building where we need to, but also creating these volumes to create sheltered microclimates within the public space. So I thought I'd end off with this quote by Maya Lin: try to give people a different way of looking at their surroundings. That's art to me. And I think I was very inspired by MDRDV's presentation to almost see their architecture through their own lens and frame and conditioning in society. And I think that's what we try and do for our clients, and really try and invoke their identity and manifest themselves in the buildings that we create.